Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan, and the light of 2017 has faded with the sundown. The sunset has set the sun on 2017. Technically it's set yesterday because right now it's the 1st of January. My sunlight is gone, so I'm lit by 2 computer screens and a flashlight. Where we are at for top 10 books of 2017. The top 10 book that I read in 2017, which I wanted to have up on the 31st of December, but obviously I did not because I'm only filming it now. Basically, in this video, I'm going to share with you the top 10 books that I read in 2017, which was a hard list to make because I read a lot of books that I liked this year. And a couple of these are series, because, you know, you can't just put one of the books on the list. You gotta put the whole series, but I didn't want the whole series taking up the list. Let's jump into it. In no real particular order, let's talk about my top 10 reads of 2017. So first on this list is A Darker Shade of Magic, as well as the rest of the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab, which I would say is the winner of the year. It became my new favorite fantasy trilogy. I loved this trilogy. It was great. It's basically about, there's these 4 different Londons with varying states of magic, and the main character can travel between these 4 Londons. And it's cool! Amazing! That was basically the premise that sucked me into reading these, and then I read them, and I loved them very much, and I highly recommend them if you enjoy fantasy. I'm pretty sure I gave the whole series like 5 stars. And speaking of V.E. Schwab, the next book on this list is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, who is the same person, but under her young adult name, which is Victoria Schwab. And This Savage Song is the first of 2 books in a duology about it's sort of this dystopic sort of city world where monsters are created from doing evil acts. It's cool. It's got some music in it. It's very fascinating, and it's a very neat book. I haven't read the second one yet, otherwise it would also be on this list. It is like sitting over there waiting for me to read it, but I greatly enjoyed This Savage Song. It was a savage song, for certain. One of my favorite books by far. These were all my favorite books. What am I saying? Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, which I really enjoyed, like a lot. Like a lot. Like I knew from the cover, the newer cover of the new paperback cover, that I would like it. Like, I had never been drawn into it before because the other cover didn't interest me, and I haven't read Fangirl or anything by Rainbow Rowell, but the new cover sort of drew me in, and I was like, I think I need to read that. And I read it and greatly enjoyed it. Carry On is basically it's a little Harry Potter-esque, but not quite. It's more about the romance and the relationships between the characters than it is the fantasy aspect or the magic aspect, and it's cool. I think it made me cry, if I recall correctly. The next book on this list is a quartet of books, though I wouldn't say all the books in the quartet were my favorite, but that is The Demon King and the Seven Realms Quartet by Cinda Williams Chima, which sort of owned somewhere near the beginning of the year, just owned like a month or something, and I really enjoyed this quartet, like, overall. I'd say that the only one that I wouldn't put on my favorites list is the second one, which is The Exiled Queen, but overall I really enjoyed this series. It was a great sort of classic fantasy, very, you know, wizards and princesses and stuff, while still having its own sort of flavor somehow without feeling too much like every other fantasy book ever. I don't know, it didn't feel like every other fantasy book ever, even though most of the pieces in it are kind of every other fantasy book ever. I don't know. Don't ask me. Just go read it. Next on this list is The Dark Prophecy by Rick Riordan, which is the second Trials of Apollo book. I don't know if I enjoyed this one more than the first one. I think I did. I enjoyed it more than The Ship of the Dead, which came out later. I did a book talk on this book, and I don't think I had any complaints about it. I really enjoyed it. The next book on this list was the first book that I read this year that really kick-started my reading year, and that was Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, which I loved. I wouldn't necessarily put Wind Witch on this list, though, but I really loved Truth Witch. It was everything that, I don't know, it was I liked it as much as I expected to like it. I tend to have good intuition on what I'm gonna like, usually, and Truth Witch was, I think, also part of my top 5 spring reads. It's really about this world where there are different types of witchery, such as truth witches and thread witches, sight witches, blood witches, wind witches, fire witches, just all sorts of things. Our main character is a truth witch, which is very rare, and she's probably the only one in the world. So, of course, everyone wants to get their hands on her. The next book on this list was definitely one of my favorites. I just read it recently. I think I only had like one possible complaint about it, and that was A Shadow Bright and Burning by Jessica Cluess, which is a historical fantasy in a sort of alternate history where there are sorcerers and witches and magicians. There is a prophecy saying that a girl sorcerer will save them all from these monsters that are plaguing them. Everyone thinks that our main character is this girl, is the prophesized one, but maybe not. So that was interesting. My only complaint was that there wasn't enough women in the book necessarily, besides our main character. A lot of the other secondary characters were dudes, which is fine. If she wants to collect a reverse harem, that's fine, but I greatly enjoyed it. I'm still waiting for the second one from the library so I can also devour it. Another one of my absolute favorites that I added before I even finished it to this list was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, which was everything I wanted it to be. And I think Torty agrees. Thank you, Torty. I listened to the audiobook. I've never listened to an audiobook before this book, and it was amazing. It was funny, it was a little harrowing, there was a little bit of adventure, there was a lot of comedy. Our main character is sort of useless, and it's great. It was great. I know that I'm just saying that these books are great, but that is why they are on my top 10, because I enjoyed them greatly. The next book on this list is Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, which I will add a caveat to this one because I didn't necessarily enjoy the ending too much, but the rest of the book was awesome. It was pretty darn awesome. It was a pretty quick read, even though it was like over 600 pages, because it's mostly in like documents and recordings and things like that, and messages and stuff like that, and it's so cool. So it wasn't what I thought it would be. It was a lot more character oriented than I expected it to be, and there was more teen romance than I expected there to be, which was fine because I'm always here for teen romance, which seems a little creepy given that I'm 25, but it's fine, it's fine. That's what young adults is all about. I'm also waiting for the second book in this series, Gemina, on my holds list at the library. The final book on the top 10, which I just had to decide this morning, is LMNOP by Mark Dunn, which I read very recently, and it's a book written in letters, which is the main reason I wanted to pick it up, because I just read Illuminae and I wanted to read something with a similar style, such as letters. I know that there is a word for books written like that, but I can't remember how to pronounce it or how to spell it. And this was a very interesting book. Basically, these people live in this town where they practically worship the guy who supposedly fictionally came up with the phrase, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," which it uses every letter in the alphabet. And of course they have a statue of him in the town square, and along with the phrase, and the letters start falling off. So the people in charge of this island nation that is next door to America, to the United States, decide to start outlawing the letters as they fall off. Which, yes, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but it's awesome. And of course, if anybody is caught using these letters out loud or in letters, they basically have 3 strikes, or was it 2 strikes? They have 3 strikes, and then they are basically exiled or put to death. I don't think anyone is actually put to death. I think everyone just ends up exiled, and then there's basically no one left on the island. It's a little silly. I know it's ridiculous, but I greatly enjoyed reading it anyway. It was fascinating. It was really fascinating, especially considering that letters and words are all made up by people anyway. So, nothing means anything. So anyway, that completes my top 10 and therefore completes this video, which is good because my throat is feeling a little hoarse. So thank you so much for watching. Feel free to tell me down below what your favorite books were this last year. What your favorite books were last year. Feel free to tell me down below. And if I haven't read them, maybe I should add them to my very long to-be-read list. And I hope that I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!